Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We are covering EDI and how it works with Prophesy Dispatch. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Today the webinar will be presented by Kevin Pasternack from Prophesy and Dan Wancura of Embassy Software. And now I'll pass it over to Kevin.
Thanks, Ashley. And I'd like to welcome everybody today as well. We've been working with Embassy Software as our EDI partner since 2002. We currently have over 180 customers that are using the EDI module, processing anywhere from a few transactions per day to several hundred transactions. EDI does take a great deal of setup, including the mapping of data sent from the trading partner into dispatch and then setting up the EDI requirements in dispatch for transmitting that data back to your customer or trading partner. Additional setup does include the auto-importing of loads from the Transport Gold, which is the EDI software Dan will talk about. They become pending loads in Prophesy Dispatch. And then also setting up whether those loads are going to be manually processed or automatically processed for shipment status transactions out of the dispatch software. And also whether or not you're going to be sending invoices, which are the 210 transactions that Dan will be talking about. During today's presentation, we're not going to go into the setup. That's extremely tedious. What we're really going to concentrate on is what is EDI? How do you receive EDI, translate, and process EDI? We'll be demonstrating the seamless integration between the Embassy software and Prophesy Dispatch. We'll also demonstrate the workflow for processing loads using EDI. Dan?
Hello, I'm Dan Wancura with Embassy Software. I'll cover some of the basics with EDI. First, let's start with a definition. Electronic data interchange is a computer-to-computer interchange of strictly formatted messages between different organizations. It is different from email in that there is no double entry of data required. Included with Transport Gold, which we will see in a moment, is translation software that converts data between the EDI formats and the imports and exports from Prophesy Dispatch. EDI specifications, or EDI specs for short, are what your customer provides and what we interpret to format the data correctly. And I must emphasize that these EDI specs are vital for the start of starting any project. And if you would like, we will certainly review those specs and explain what they mean and what they do. EDI formats, EDI specifications are all based upon EDI standards. EDI standards for North America are governed by the ASC X12 committee, of which Embassy Software is. The basic EDI transactions supported with Prophesy are as follows. First, the load tender, or 204, is basically an offer of a truckload order received from your customer, which you can accept or decline. This is closely tied with the tender accept or decline, or 990, which is your response of acceptance or non-acceptance of the tendered order. This is generally a response time. There is generally a response time requirement of 1 to 2 hours to return the 990 accept or decline. If it is not responded to in this time frame, then the shipper may pull the transaction back and offer the load out to another carrier. The 204 coupled with the 990 is a very time-sensitive process, so it's particularly important to pay attention to that. Shipment status, or 214, is actually made up of several appointment and status events from pickup to delivery, all of which can be sent near real time if desired. We've configured the system and worked with Prophesy over the years to automate and streamline the 214 process, and so it's a pretty good process at this point in time, and we'll talk more about this shortly. The Freight Invoice, or 210, is simply the delivery of electronic invoices to your customers. Those are pretty straightforward. Last, the Functional Acknowledgement, or 997, confirms the receipt of data sent by one party to another, and it can be turned on for any of the transaction types above, but we think its primary value is confirming the receipt and acceptance of freight invoices. Thus, we pair it generally with the freight invoice. But it's important to keep in mind that this 997 transaction only confirms acceptance of data content, not so much the reasonableness of data values in the invoice. So, for example, if the invoice amount is incorrect, the 997 won't pick that up. But if there's something wrong with the data, then it certainly will pick that up. So there is still significant value in the 997 with the freight bill. Because shipment status, the 214, contains several different status events, it's worthwhile to have a look at the common ones. Included in many EDI specifications from shippers are pickup and delivery appointments, arrivals and departures from stops, and the en route status, which is typically requested by some shippers for longer haul moves. For example, if there is no reported pickup or delivery in a day's time, then they might want an X6 status, the en route status, once or twice during that day. With the arrivals and departures at stops, the arrival time is key to measuring on-time performance, while the departure is used more to measure dwell time at that location. Keep in mind that shippers may ask for only a subset of these status events, or they may request all of them. It's different with each customer, and so the review of those EDI specs is where we pick that up. With Prophesy, as we shall see later, the status data is entered in check call or populated to check call from Mobilcom. It can be sent out as it is entered on a timed interval or manually sent after auditing. An audit review function is available, which we will see shortly. This allows for seeing what is to be sent, or if it is sent automatically, it will show what has been sent. As with email, EDI data is transmitted using Internet protocols. You may be familiar with the simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or SMTP, which is used with email. So with EDI data, it's the same thing, but using different Internet protocols. The most basic is FTP, File Transfer Protocol, which is the delivery of data to your customer's FTP server from your FTP client. With the EDI processes, status and billing data are delivered to the FTP server, followed by the picking up of new load data from that FTP server. So it's sort of a turnaround process. The FTP client is constantly pinging the FTP server for this data, delivery and pickup process. So, and it's also non-encrypted data, something to keep in mind. AS2, the second one on the list here, is a more elegant means of transmitting EDI data, where each party will send their data as it becomes available. So data travels in both directions simultaneously at times, plus it's encrypted. So it's a nice, clean way of sending data, but one downside of AS2 is that it uses certificates, which must be updated from time to time, which can easily be overlooked. And if it is overlooked, then it actually stops the transmission of data until it is resolved. The protocol of choice between FTP, AS2, or the last one on the list here that we'll cover just momentarily, the value-added network, these will be determined probably by your customer and can be obtained from them, usually looking at their EDI specs or perhaps by trading emails. Using these methods to transmit data includes no monthly charge, that is the AS2 and the FTP, but it does require self-monitoring to some degree. There is no network visibility of data sent or received unless offered by your partner's system, nor is there outside monitoring of data transmissions. A simpler method of handling EDI transmissions is to use a value-added network, the last on the list here, which is somewhat like an electronic post office. You send all your data to one place, and you pick it up from one place. All transmission protocols are handled for you. It offers visibility of data sent and received, as well as monitoring of data as it flows through the network. And you will be contacted if there are transmission issues. There are pros and cons between the value-added network versus direct transmission using FTP or AS2. So it is best to evaluate these in advance, and I am always glad to work with customers on what the pros and the cons are. For the demonstration, we'll look at the processes involved with EDI that are supported by Embassy Software and Prophesy Dispatch. We'll look first at accept decline process, the ones handled in Embassy's Transport Gold software, followed by the load import, status collection and audit, and finally freight billing, all within Prophesy. Shown here is an incoming load tender, a 204 EDI document in its raw format. This is converted into the Transport Gold database using the included EDI translator and shows up on the document list screen. Keep in mind that this is computer-to-computer data, typically sent from one party to the other without user intervention. Unlike email or customer websites, it does not require the reentry of data, and this is the key part of the whole EDI process. You'll first see the EDI load tender in data in Transport Gold after being alerted via a small pop-up window in your desktop. The document list screen, and next slide please, shows what load tenders have arrived for your review. Highlighted here is an original load tender, which shows as O for original, with the details of the load listed below. You can see the origin and destination, dates, times, as well as the number of pickups and drops. For more information on the load, you can click on the Detail button on the left. Detail includes the shipment ID and bill of lading number, if provided. It is not provided in this case. Specific load at and consignee addresses, contacts if available, and other information such as weights and pieces. Returning to the document list screen, you can accept or decline the load. We'll accept this one. You can see that it now shows as A for accepted. Once the 990 acceptance transaction is transmitted, it changes to AT, accepted and transmitted, to reflect the updated status. The EDI loads are now available as pending loads within Prophesy.
Thanks, Dan. So we're now going to take a look at what happens when that load that you've accepted comes over into the Prophesy software, and that is an automatic process. So when the load is accepted, it will show up in your pending loads board. Here's that load that just came over that Dan was showing you. It gave a load number, 8442. Let's go ahead and take a look at the detail on the load. And as Dan reviewed with us, we can see that the PO number has been filled in with the number that came over in the EDI transaction, as well as the bill of lading number. We can see the customer, QVC Corporate. We can see the origin on the load, the Delta Hillside Warehouse in Edison, New Jersey, the scheduled pickup and time, date and time, as well as where it's going to, QVC Lancaster in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and the requested delivery date and time. We can also see the goods and commodities, the weight, once again, as came over in the load tender, as well as the pieces. So once the load is here, you would go ahead and process it the way you normally would a load in Prophesy Dispatch. I'm going to go ahead and just rate the load, and I have a rate schedule set up for the customer, so it automatically rated the load. I'm now going to go ahead and assign a driver, tractor, trailer to the load, so I'm simply going to click on the Assign button, and we'll put a driver, tractor, trailer on there, which I've just done. And we now have the assigned load. So let's close this screen, and let's go to our Assign Loads. And this is where your process may change slightly from the way you're used to using the software. What many people would do at this time is once the driver notifies them that the load has been picked up, they would go ahead and just click on Status, and that would change the status of the load from an assigned load to an en route load. However, when you're using EDI, so that all of your status updates are transmitted and captured for your trading partner, you're going to use the check call screen to do your updates. So I'm going to update the check call screen, come into the check call screen. And the one thing that you will notice is that there's an extra field in the grid, and that's the appointment time. So when you actually make the appointment for the pickup and the appointment for the delivery, you'll click on these buttons, and that data will then automatically be transmitted to your customer via EDI. Or if you have the system set up to manually transmit the data, you'll do it manually. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to come in and say we scheduled the appointment for this morning at 10 o'clock for the pickup. And we'll change this, and we'll make this 10 o'clock as well. We could have done the same thing from the booking screen, and we'll go ahead and confirm that. And we'll go ahead and just confirm a delivery time for this afternoon as well. So once again, we would have contacted where we're delivering to and gone over this information with them. And we'll save that. So now in order to generate the confirmation via EDI, I'm simply going to click on the appointment confirmation, and it's telling me that an EDI appointment is being made for 10 o'clock this morning. Shall I continue? Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and confirm when the delivery is going to be made as well. Yes. And so those items have now been sent to our customer, confirming that information via EDI. When you get notified from the driver that he's arrived to make the pickup in Lancaster, we would go ahead and we would select Arrived. We'll select the origin, Edison, and we'll go ahead and click Save. And now we can see that in the grid, it is entered that the dispatcher entered an arrival check call and the date and time when it was entered. We'll also notice next to the pickup location in Edison that the actual arrival time has been captured in there as well. When we're notified by the driver that he's actually that he's loaded and he's leaving, once again, we can capture that. So we'll capture the departure time from Edison, and we'll go ahead and save that. And once again, down on the grid, we can see that the dispatcher entered a call today at 9:22, and it was a departure call. And if we look at the actual departure time for our pickup, we can see that that date and time is now filled in. As I said earlier, if you have the system configured to automatically send this information to your customer via EDI, it's all been transmitted. However, if you choose not to send it automatically, you would go into the EDI status screen and you would transmit it manually. And we're going to take a look at that in just a minute. Before we go there, however, if you are using any type of mobile communication, whether it be OmniTrax, Rand McNally, PeopleNet, Teletrack, or our solution SkyTrack, the driver can simply enter the pickup times, the delivery times, into the mobile device. That information automatically flows through to the dispatch system, updates the check call screen, and that would go ahead and trigger the EDI transmission. So you would not have to do this manually. Let's close the check call screen, and let's go into Operations. We'll go down to EDI. We'll go to Shipment Statuses, and we're going to take a look at the Shipment Status screen. And normally when you would come in this screen in an operational mode, you would see a list of loads that you've already processed. And as far back as that history goes, is based on a preference setting for how many days you want to see or how many transactions or loads you want to see. Anything that had not been processed would be showing in red. Anything that has been processed is going to show in green. So we can see the load that we've been working with, load 8442. We can see it's in green. And once again, that's because my system today is configured to automatically process the transactions. We can go in and take a look at what transactions have been processed by clicking the down arrow. We'll click on History, and now we can see the history of what's been processed. And we can see here the status code AA, which was the pickup appointment that was sent, X3, which was the arrival at pickup that was sent, AF, which is the departed pickup, once again, has been sent, and the AB, which is the delivery appointment that's been sent. Now, if we were in this screen and we manually wanted to update some information, we could certainly do that. One thing we might want to send, if our customer required that, is an en route to delivery location, so an en route check call. So we could select the en route, and then we could update the date and the time. And if we wanted to manually put in an ETA estimate for the delivery, we could do that. The other item that you can also send to your trading partner is reason codes, meaning exceptions. Why did the driver leave late? Whatever the exceptions are. And these are all codes that are provided to you as part of the EDI spec. We'll go ahead and close this, and we'll close this screen. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into the check call screen. And let's say we got our call from our driver that he had made the delivery in Lancaster. So I'm going to, or he had arrived to make the delivery. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to select the QVC, and we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And we can see that once again an arrival call is entered in here by the dispatcher, and we can see that was at 9:26 local, and we can see that time is filled in under actual arrival. And the last call, of course, that we would get would be from our driver saying that he has actually made the delivery and he's leaving that location. So we'll capture that and we'll save it. The system is now telling me that all stops are complete. Do I want to complete the load? I'm going to say yes, I do. And the load is now completed. So we've gone through all of the 214, which are the shipment status updates that are required for this customer or trading partner. What I'd like to demonstrate to you now is how you would do your billing via EDI. So the process is very similar to what you're used to doing today in the system. I'm going to do accounting, print post freight bills. I'm going to select the load that we just did, 8442. I do want to point out that you would certainly can process multiple invoices at a time, just like you can do in the system today. We just have one load in here for QBC, so we're just going to process the one load or one invoice at this point. Down at the bottom, we can see all the charges that exist for that load, just as you can do today. If we want to make any adjustments to those charges, we would do that. Let's go ahead and take a look at that invoice. Now we can look at it, but we do not have to print the invoice because we're going to transmit all this information via EDI. So I'm going to close this. It's going to ask me, did it print correctly? Even though we didn't print it, I'm going to say, yes, it did. And I'm going to click on Post. And I'm going to click on Post because I'm still going to send this over to QuickBooks, which is the accounting system I'm integrated to, because I do want to certainly track that receivable. However, instead of mailing that invoice to my customer, I'm now going to go to Operations, we're going to go to EDI again, and we're going to go to Send Freight Bills. And by clicking on Process here, all of the freight bills that have been processed and are set up to go via EDI are automatically going to be sent to the trading partner. By sending the invoice to the trading partner via EDI, they're going to get it quicker. They should be able to turn that around, pay me quicker, cutting down on my receivables. And that's how you would do your invoicing via EDI with the system. What we're going to do now is we're going to hear from Aaron Simpson. Aaron is the president of the Simpson Group. They've been a Prophesy customer for a few years, and they've been using Prophesy Dispatch software integrated with EDI. And Aaron is going to share some of his experiences with us. Aaron?
Yeah. Hi. I'm just basically, you can see the testimony that we presented. We're currently using the Prophesy Transport Gold software with our current customers, and it has certainly made us more efficient in many different areas of our operation. It keeps everybody on the same page. Everybody sees things in real time. The trading of the information electronically not only confirms the information is correct because you're receiving it directly from your customer, but they're receiving it in real time as well. And as stated previously, in the invoicing areas, it cuts down on the amount of lag time for mailing purposes, the hassle of the post office, paper, ink, all of those items, just with a click of a button. Not only can you send that information, but that information is still viewable to you and can be edited as needed.
Great, Aaron. Thank you very much for joining us today. Aaron has volunteered to stay with us. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to open it up to questions. So if anybody does have any questions for Dan, for myself, or for Aaron, we'd like to open it up at this point to questions. Questions, please?
This is Jason with the Shaker Group. I have a question for Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron, how many transactions a day or a week are you processing through EDI?
I'm processing, in regards to my load information, I'm processing as many as 25 separate loads per day. So the following day, I'm processing at least 50 transactions in regards to my receivables. We do a lot of round trips, so the exchange in the information we do on our line haul is the information we trade on the load side, but we also are able to bill out our dunnage returns, our empties, through the EDI process on billing as well. So it definitely streamlines it from what we do on a load percentage on a daily basis to what we do on our billing percentages the following day.
And on those loads, Aaron, I would assume that you have multiple transactions on each load, that you're doing arrivals, departures, maybe on route calls as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
So as far as transactions, it's probably in the area of 100-plus transactions per day, usually?
Yeah, you can count on at least 5 transactions for every load as you're going to do an arrival, your load information check call, your en route check call, your arrival at your destination, as well as your departure. So those are your standard transactions that you're going to do, as well as any check calls, which are a required definition as well for us with our customers, and we do that through the SkyTrack.
Aaron, did you elect to go on EDI as a company, or did the customer demand it?
It was not a demand. We could see that it was starting to steamroll in that direction, and we certainly wanted to be ahead of the game. But we were familiar with how the EDI process was being implemented into what we do and the customers we do it with. So it would have been a matter of time that it would have been a requirement. But for us to get in on the ground floor and be ahead of the curve, but that need to move in that direction has also opened the doors to other customers that we deal with by simply letting them know we have the EDI technology. It has certainly opened doors for us with other customers who are familiar with it and would prefer to use this type of technology.
How many trading partners do you currently have? 3. 3?
Mm-hmm.
Was the setup, how would you feel about the setup time to get set up with a trading partner? Was that painful, or was it easy?
Once we got the system in place and educated our people to set up the trading partners was pretty seamless. The initial startup was a little bit difficult because with the customer we implemented this with, it was a new process for them as well. So there was a lot of tick and tack as to how they wanted to receive the information and how they wanted us to send it. So there was an adjustment period, but that was more so based on customer needs and requests.
Okay.
Dan, is there anything that you would add to that as far as setup and implementation and the testing process that goes on when setting up a new trading partner?
I'd say, as we've become, since we've worked together for a long time, we've become very familiar with the Prophesy interfaces and how to work those. So we can usually get something set up pretty quickly. If the shippers are on board who are testing, if they're familiar with EDI, and then if everything is a go on the carrier side, we can get testing done very quickly, and then get it to a live state. So it does depend on a few things, but provided everyone is willing, then it goes fairly quickly.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have a question for Kevin. Do you have an option to auto-accept load tenders?
Dan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we have a preference. If you want to do auto-accept, then we have a preference you can set to automatically generate that 990 and send it out. So the answer to that is yes, we do.
And I think that's an important thing to highlight just for a second. So the question was automatic acceptance of load tenders. So if you have a customer that you're doing EDI with, and you accept all the loads that they send you, you don't have to have someone monitoring or looking for those pop-ups with the Transport Gold software. The entire process can be automated. So the load is tendered, it's auto-accepted, the acknowledgement is sent, and then the load automatically then processes and comes right into your Prophesy software and becomes a pending load. For those of you that have been using EDI for a while, you may be saying to yourself, well, hold it a second, we don't have that automatic interface. Loads do not come into the Prophesy software automatically. That was an enhancement that was released in the last 60 days. So if you do not have that implemented, if you would contact us here at Prophesy, we can certainly get either an update out to you or get your system configured so that occurs, and you can simply send us an email and we'll take care of that for you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. This is Helen with Greater Remark Express. How do you guys handle images that go along with the billing, the bill of ladings and like any lumper receipts or stuff like that? Is that also interfaced with the EDI, or is that something separate?
That's a great question, Helen. In the setup, if you go into your customer file, for those of you that have document imaging today, if you go into a customer file, click on rendition billing, you will see in that pop-up there's a box that says send with EDI. So it's very rare that we see an EDI spec that requires a backup document to go with it, but it does occur, and if it does occur, we can certainly support that. It's just a matter of checking that box during implementation, and it will send the backup documents with the 210, the invoice. Great question. Any other questions today?
Please, Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Kevin. David Patterson at Reliable Carriers. What's the implementation? How quickly, and the cost? And is it transaction fees or one-time deal?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well, David. The first part of your question is a very difficult one to answer. As far as how long it takes to implement, I'm sure Dan would agree with me. We've seen on the shortest end an implementation that would just take a few days to a week or two. And a lot of that does depend on your trading partner and the testing that they're going to do. Dan's team is great in making themselves available. They do 98% of the setup and implementation, both on their side and the mapping, and training you within the Prophesy software of what to do. But once again, we are at the mercy of your customer trading partner for doing the testing with them and giving you the approval of saying, okay, you're good to go. So it can certainly drag out depending on how that testing goes. As far as cost of the module, the standard cost of the module, including the translation software, the activating the module within the Prophesy Dispatch software, and setting up one trading partner is $3,900. Additional trading partners are evaluated on how many transaction sets, how complex are they, so we would quote those, but they are, I will tell you, extremely reasonable. And as far as the cost of sending the EDI, it really depends on volume. It depends on which method you're sending, whether it's a van, well then there's a charge, a volume-based FTP, there's basically no charge. AS2 direct connection, once again, there's no charge. However, if the AS2 is required, you are required to purchase the AS2 encryption software, which is a one-time fee. Rather than get into specific charges of vans and things like that, we'd prefer to take those offline with individuals and evaluate the volume that you would be doing. But people will, once again, will certainly tell you that as long as if your customer comes to you and is asking you to do EDI, after a very quick conversation with us, we can determine with you whether or not you're going to see a return on that based on the volume of loads that you're doing with that customer. Very good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Well, if there aren't any, I would certainly like to thank everyone for joining us. I'd like to thank a special thanks to Aaron Simpson from the Simpson Group for joining us today and sharing your experience with us. Dan, I want to thank you as a valued Prophesy and Axelis partner for joining us, and we wish all of you a good day. Thank you again.